We have Darden Rice. We have David McDowell. And we have Carolyn Fries. They've drawn for order and they're seated in their respective places. All right. Our first question will begin with candidate Eldridge. What makes you stand out from the other candidates?
I'm a Marine. That's pretty good. I've also donated over 5 gallons of blood now to blood services. I have a service experience. I serve the public, have for years, and that's what I do, and that's how I stand out.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
Hi everyone, thank you for being here tonight. My name is Darden Rice. I think what distinguishes me is that I have the longest record of public service in my race, and I have a proven track record of working with relevant community city issues, whether it's fighting for voting rights, working on healthcare reform issues, working with neighborhoods, working on recycling. I bring a depth of knowledge and unquestionable commitment to this race. And I believe that's what sets me apart.
Thank you. Candidate Michaela.
Well, thank you very much to League of Women Voters. I'm Dr. David Michaela. I'm running for St. Pete City Council. I sure could use your support. What distinguishes me? Well, I think this city belongs to you. I don't think this city should belong to a small political class made up of big corporations, politicians, bureaucrats, extreme special interests, and political groups with extreme agendas. And I think because it belongs to a political class, we're on the wrong track. We have a city that's deficit spending. We have taxes and fees going up every year now. And we have a pension plan that's underfunded by $325 million. In fact, there is one person with the longest record of public service at this table, and it's myself. I've been working for good health care at Tallahassee since 2002. I've been going to city council meetings and bringing citizens there to stand up for tax cuts since 2006. So if you want someone who's a small businessman, if you want someone who's going to stand up for the citizens and tell the people who are special interests to take a hike, you come help Dr. David Michaela get elected to St. Pete City Council.
Thank you. Candidate Fries.
What sets me apart from my opponents is that I've been living my platform of economic development by creating jobs or creating companies that create jobs and export products. I've also volunteered in the educational system as a PTA president and a school volunteer. I've been a neighborhood association president, and I've also been fiscally responsible at my home, my businesses, and my volunteer activities. In addition, I have firsthand experience in 4 of the 7 target industries targeted for job growth here in this area. And in addition to that, I have been living in District 4 for 23 years, raising my family and serving my neighborhood.
Thank you. Now this question will be directed at candidate Rice. What transit plan is needed and why?
Well, a lot of what also sets me apart is that I am the most knowledgeable, forward-thinking, and committed candidate in this race when it comes to mass transit. Mass transit is the future to growth and economic development in our county and indeed in our region. I sit as a citizen representative to the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. In that role, I'm a leader on mass transit. I'm the co-chair of the Green Light Pinellas Civic Committee process. And the board oversees a $119 million budget. I do support the referendum that will come up in November of 2014 to give the public the opportunity to vote for a sales tax referendum to support an increased mass transit. And that means that we'll have a 65% increase in our bus service, and also means that we'll have critical funds available to look at the future, even light rail. But I hope we'll get another point at some time this evening to talk about what this referendum means
Thank you.
for improved bus service. Thank you.
Candidate Taylor.
Can you please repeat that question?
What transit plan is needed and why?
We need a transit plan we can afford and that the citizens want. Right now, what's being proposed by Commissioner Rice from the PSCA is a $130 million sales tax hike that will take money out of our economy to build a train that goes from St. Pete to Clearwater that takes an hour for a trip, and now it takes 45 minutes by car. Darden here, believes that it's better for the government to decide how you travel. I believe it's better for you to decide how you travel. We are not Chicago. We are not New York. Let's look at Charlotte. When they raised sales taxes and promised 5 lines, they built 1.8 of them and couldn't finish the second one before they came upon a need for more taxes. I don't want increased congestions. I don't want to take $100 million out of the pockets of poor people and put it into the pockets of rich people who are in the political class with candidate Rice here.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze.
I would definitely like to see expanded busing. I am, however, very skeptical about the rail component of Fremont Pinellas. Me personally, I have 4 children, so in my family, we have 5 licensed drivers and 1 car. 2 of my kids go to St. Pete College and ride the bus back and forth, or my husband and I have to lug them back and forth all the time. Expanded busing at a minimum would be a great help to my family. So for me personally, I'm going to look at what I'm currently spending on the PSTA tax, what I think I may end up spending, or how much I would have to spend each year to have the additional sales tax make up for that, and then make a personal decision. And I urge all of you to do the same thing.
Thank you. Candidate Hildrich.
I actually use the bus, and they do a great job, I can tell you that. There is room for improvement. The bus should run 24/7. And the reason being is that would attract more business, because I remember when I was working at a different job, I had to leave early because the last bus was leaving at a certain time, and I had to get there. And I could have stayed with the job and made more money, but I couldn't because the last bus was leaving. And not so crazy about the rail because it's very expensive. Done a little research on it. On average, depending on where it's built, it's $35, $20 a mile. They'll hold maybe a lower price, but it ends up, well, we need to add more, like you're getting your car repaired. Well, we didn't see this, we got to get this, So I'm not totally fond of the rail. We're not that type of community that has needs a rail, but 24/7 bus system, we definitely need.
All right, thank you. Now this question is going to be directed first to candidate Michaela. What would you do about homelessness? Do we need to create additional services to those people in need?
Yes, our citizens do need to create additional services to those citizens in need. We need to reach out neighbor to neighbor. And we're going to have the most impact if churches, community groups, neighborhoods, and the like reach out and help their brothers and sisters and ask them, what can I do to help you one-on-one? But what we don't need are more government programs, because we've had endless government programs. And let me ask you this, do you think we're doing better now? We can talk about some marginal improvements, but there's a revolving door system where the homeless get drunk down at Williams Park, they're arrested, they go to the jail for 3 hots and a cot, they go back the next day to Williams Park, and the cycle repeats over and over. That's what the government produces. But you know what citizens produce? Real change. When you reach out to your brother or your sister, like I have as a doctor, and I say, are you ready yet? Are you ready to turn your life around? Are you ready to stop drinking? Are you ready to be responsible for your life? Then they finally get it. And of course, there's other people, there's kids and the like, but we're not going to solve it for the government.
Thank you. All right, candidate Freeze.
Yes, I recently took a tour of both Safe Harbor and Pinellas Hope facilities. Safe Harbor is geared for people who are arrested, and they have an option to go to Safe Harbor instead of going to the jail. At Safe Harbor, unlike the jail, they can get the services that they need to hopefully change their lives and get back on their feet. The city does support Safe Harbor to a certain extent financially, as well as Pinellas Hope is what they call a dry facility where you cannot have any drug or alcohol type problems. And these are geared more for single people. For families, we've got groups like ASAP, which is now managed by the Free Clinic. We've got the YWCA. I think there's a lot of programs out there. We could just do a better job of promoting them and making sure folks know. One thing I do not want to happen is what happened when I was up at Safe Harbor, where the man who runs that said he got a call from somebody in Minneapolis that said he got a bus ticket to St. Pete and could they save a bed for him. That I don't want to happen.
Thank you. Candidate Hildrich.
I was going to piggyback on that, I guess, because what I was going to say, even if we ended homelessness tomorrow, it's going to create a vacuum. More homeless people will come into town, because the better we treat them, and we should, don't get me wrong, the more people will want to come here. We do have to treat people on a one-on-one basis, like Dr. McKinney was saying. This is something that we have to do. It's the right thing to do. One thing get work. And a lot of homeless people are convicted felons and they can't get jobs. No one's going to hire them. The state has a way to get the felony record expunged or pardoned, and we should help them. After 10 years, they can do that. And we should help them do that so that they can have self-confidence and a sense of self-worth. And doing that, they'll be able to get work. And it's very difficult to get work right now, I know this. But by helping them get a sense of self-confidence and self-worth, they're more inclined to get a job. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'd like to clear something up that my opponents got right. There's almost 7,000 homeless people in Pinellas County, and 40% of that number are children and single mothers. And so we have a duty to be compassionate, we have a moral duty to work with helping to get people who fall on hard times, to get them the services and the access to shelters that they need. We need to help these women who have kids who are on the street. I don't think it's always fair to use the image of drunkenness to paint the whole picture of the homelessness challenge here in the city. I've also, with my nephew, recently toured Pinellas Hope, and incidentally, the director wanted us to be sure to know that they need money. So if you want to do something about homelessness, that's one organization. They need money, they need work boots, because they're helping to put people to work there. I think the city ought to continue what it's doing to help out those two programs, and also, as with PSTA, support moving buses for Williams Park.
All right. This next question will be directed first at candidate Freeze. What would you do to create jobs and improve the community economy?
I've been creating jobs for the last 10 years. My husband and I have spun out several companies from his work at the University of South Florida. And it's interesting because people say, oh, well, how many jobs have you created? So I actually went down last night, wrote down the names of everyone. You know, over the 10 years, we've created about 30 jobs. It's not a lot. But I think what we need to do is really encourage more small businesses and more entrepreneurship. The city and the state and the county have all been focused on getting these big name companies to come in there and create 100 jobs or 500 jobs. And again, if that fails, we're out 100 jobs or 500 jobs. If we were to have a number of small businesses that have 5 to 10 jobs each, then potentially one of those would become the next Google or the next Facebook. You never know. But just like your financial accounts or retirement accounts, you want to diversify. You don't want to put all your money in one basket.
Thank you. Candidate Eldridge.
Well, we need great schools for children to be working here because we want to attract businesses, and businesses will not want to come here if we don't have a good school system. Although that's a separate section of the government, that is important. Public safety, they want to be safe here, so we have to have a good public safety. Beautiful city. It has to be a beautiful city. No one wants to live in a place that's falling apart. Look at that. It's a nice view from here. I see the palm trees. So we want that. They need tax benefits. They don't want to be taxed to death. If the taxes are too high, they're not going to come here. If they come here, they start a business to make money, and we have to encourage that. We want them to make money. We want them to make a profit. If they see this as a profitable place to start a business, they're going to want to come here. And once again, public transportation, it needs to run 24/7 because some businesses run 24/7.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
I think the number one role of City Council is to look to build the economy and create jobs. And it's a focus and it's a mindset. And it's something that every council member needs to wrap their heads around. But how do you do that? You do that by meeting with the CEOs, by meeting with the business leaders, by knowing exactly what it takes in the district for what those business leaders need to grow, how they want to increase their profits. Do they need to find or construct new buildings? How do they want to add payroll? Do they want to relocate employees here? You won't see me voting for tax breaks for big box stores to go on 34th Street. You will see me working strategically and smartly in an incredible way to look at how to grow businesses here. We also know that we will grow businesses by focusing on existing firms. That will bring us our 38% of our new jobs. One of the challenges we have to work on is a positive and clear regional identity. One of the reasons we're lacking that is because of our lack of mass transit, which is, again, key to building our economy for the future in the region.
Thank you. Candidate McKayla.
Well, this shows the difference between myself and my leading opponent here, Darden Rice. She thinks the number one job of city government is to create jobs. She just said it. I think the number one job of city government is to do the basic things. Provide for public safety, roads, utilities, and park. And then make sure that the citizens and businesses keep most of the money they earn in their own pocket so they can grow the economy themselves. Let's look at this area that some elite people sitting on city council are going to decide what jobs are created, what businesses come, what businesses don't come. That is a recipe for disaster. So here's what we can do. Let's cut taxes in real ways. Let's deregulate. Let's get rid of these regulations on electronic messaging centers. Let's stop telling people they can't have a sign spinner. Let's stop telling people they have to hire someone because they have this certain social profile and not. And then we'll attract manufacturing, we'll attract medical tourism, we'll attract natural gas for clean energy and the like.
Thank you. All right, this time our question will start first with candidate Eldridge. Do you consider yourself a fiscal conservative, and if
Yes.
so, in what areas?
Well, you don't spend money you don't have. You don't borrow money, you don't make your children pay your debts. It's just, that's it, fiscal conservative. You don't spend money you don't have. Don't get me wrong, no, we can't print money, so we've got to spend money on certain things. We do need public safety. We do need to make the city beautiful, like I was saying before. There are certain things you have to make the city a place where business will want to come. But you don't overspend on those things, and you have to realize that you have to allow the people to keep as much of their own money as possible. We do need to have some taxes, of course. But overall, I am a fiscal conservative. I want you to keep your money as a taxpayer, and I want the government to spend as little money as possible to get all the functions of government done.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
I consider myself fiscally responsible, and here's why. As the economy improves and more revenues come in from increased property taxes collected, I do support rolling back our millage rate to the level it was before. I think that's just a responsible thing to do. We raised it to deal with budget shortfalls because of the recession. Let's set it back as we get out of the recession and the money comes back in. I am also fiscally responsible because I do not, unlike my opponents, I do not support spending our reserve money on one-time budget gaps and feel-good projects. We are a coastal city, and if we are ever in the direct path of a serious storm, we will need those emergency funds. We may not have enough funds. So that is why I consider myself fiscally responsible. I'm also looking out for smart ways that we can invest in the future by investing in our infrastructure and looking out for ways to bring jobs here where people can put dinner on the table and raise their families.
Thank you. Candidate McKayla.
Yes, Dr. McHale, here I'm the only fiscal conservative here who really knows how to get this government under control. And we hear words like we're going to be fiscally responsible. We're going to lower the millage rate. You know when we heard that before? During the 2008 property tax crisis, when the millage rate was cut, but the money to the government kept going up. Here, I challenge my opponent to say, not only will I lower it to the rollback rate, I'll cut the millage rate so that our revenues go down from property taxes. Not up 10 million like they did last year, not up 10 million like projected for this coming year. Let's talk about that $80 million excess reserves, not the reserves, the surplus mad money in the bank that the government is taking from your wallets and put in their own bank accounts. Darden Rice thinks that is needed for storms. Maybe if she was really the most knowledgeable candidate with a long history of public service, she would know that 87.5% of that money comes from federal and state resources. The rest comes from insurance. And we haven't touched it with all the storms in 2004. That's why it keeps growing. If she was really responsible, she would take $80 million of that surplus and fund part of the $325 billion shortfall in unfunded pension.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze.
I just wanted to clarify something. When Dory made the comment that her opponents, plural, want to spend reserve, I am not one of those people. That was not directed toward me. Secondly, personally, I am a fiscal conservative. If you look back at the mid-2000s when the property values were skyrocketing, and all of my friends were going out buying investment properties because they thought that the market would never stop, I paid off my house. I knew it couldn't keep going. I was smart enough, I paid off my house. Now all of our friends are in big trouble because they're in serious debt. think the most important thing is to keep the operating budget here in the city from inflating to levels like they were back in 2009. The operating budget was $594 million. This year, the proposed budget for fiscal year 2014 is $472 million. So we definitely need to keep those operating budgets low as compared to not letting them go back up where they were. The way to do that is through process improvements and investment in technology that will allow for improvements.
Thank you. Now this question will be directed at candidate Rice. Please comment on the Neighborhood Partnership Grant Program. Should it continue?
Yes, and I think one of the things that really concerns me, and something that I will tackle when I'm elected as your next city council representative, is unfortunately we've seen, because of the recession, we've seen some serious cuts to the agencies and departments at City Hall that really give our neighborhoods their best support. And I do think now that the economy is improving, I do think we need to look at ways to support those programs, that one specifically, and also work to improve our codes enforcement so that our neighborhood leaders can have the tools that we used to help turn neighborhoods around. The two quickest ways to help turn neighborhoods around are cops and codes. And I also just want to say thank you so much. I have the full support and endorsement of our Suncoast Police Union, and I take our public safety very seriously. The problem is now is that leaders of neighborhoods, when they go to the city to try to fix a problem, there's not one person they go to that has the whole toolbox and all the strategies to help them solve issues in their neighborhood. I will work to help change that.
Thank you. Candidate Michaela.
Well, we need strong neighborhoods, and there may be a role to continue the grant programs, but we do need to prioritize our spending. Here's a good way to get more money back in the neighborhoods. Let's cut your taxes. Let's cut your utility bills. Let's make sure more money stays in your pocket in the first place. And then when you have a neighborhood watch that's asking for dues, you can give them some dues. When you need to buy some things for your neighborhood watch, you'll have the money to do it. I think if we target those, we're going to do well. Not even target, just broadly cut those taxes. Now, my opponent likes to crow about her endorsement from the PBA as if that's based on her public safety record. It's not based on that. It's based on her undying support to union leaders and her willingness to do absolutely nothing about the $325 million unfunded retirement benefit liability. The union members will be left out in the cold when the city enters bankruptcy, and we start doing that in a few years. I will take $60 million of our surplus reserves and fund those pension plans. My opponent will not fund the pension plans because she truly thinks the money belongs to her for spending on social
Thank you,
programs.
Candidate Cruz.
I love neighborhoods. I was neighborhood treasurer and then president of the association for 2 years after that. I think one thing that we found out in our neighborhood is when a neighborhood is a strong neighborhood, they're able to raise the money. They don't necessarily need the city grants. And there are other grants out there that can be applied for. In addition to in-kind donations from local businesses, from people that live in the neighborhood, and also volunteer hours. So there are a number of grants out there outside of the city. Yeah, so I think we really need to be careful with the money that we spend in the city.
Thank you. Candidate.
I don't think we have the resources yet to give grants as much as we'd like to. I'll agree with Dr. McHale about, tax benefits. If someone fixes up their house, they should be penalized by having they're going to have a more valuable house and then have a higher property tax. We should encourage people to make their own property more beautiful. And in doing that, it will improve the city and people will take pride in their communities. Also, I don't support spending the emergency fund for anything other than an emergency and something like Hurricane Andrew type emergency. And there was one more thing I was going to say, and it just totally slipped my mind. But so basically, no, I'm not really into the grants. I'm more into giving people tax benefits for doing the work themselves.
Thank you. Now, this next question will be directed first at candidate Michaela. Questions from our audience member says, I agree that red light cameras lessen the amount of the worst accidents, such as T-bone crashes. Would you continue this program and make the yellow light duration uniform?
I would end the red light camera program if I had the power to do it. I have analyzed the data personally. I got those spreadsheets from the city, and I showed that the accident rate went up 44%. And the rates that allegedly went down were so-called red light related accidents, which people who are experts in the field say are not a reliable way to monitor it. So here we are increasing the number of accidents by 35 extra accidents, and these are serious rear-end accidents. So we need to stop this. There's only one reason we have a red light camera program, that's to enrich the city at the expense of the citizens. So I've seen these people in my office after they've had whiplash injuries and after they're in the court system and they're doing personal injury lawsuits for years. That drives up their cost of insurance. So we need to stop playing games. We need to stop thinking that the city can control behavior in this way, because they actually have changed behavior. More people are slamming on their brakes when they come to red lights. More people are speeding up so they don't get caught on the camera. It's time to end the red light camera program.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze?
I would also vote to end the red light camera program. I do definitely like the idea of changing the timing on the yellow lights in addition to the pedestrian countdowns, as well as the synchronization of the lights themselves, especially in the case of arrows, whether you go from a red light to a green arrow, yellow arrow, to a green light, or if you go to a red light for a few seconds before it goes to the green. So I think there's definitely some improvements and consistency that can be done there. So yes, if it came up, I would vote against it. But in the meanwhile, everybody, drive the speed limit, keep an eye out, get ready to stop, and if it turns yellow, just gently hit the brakes.
Thank you. Candidate Eldridge?
Yes, I am totally opposed to the red light cameras, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, it is tyranny. I do not like the government putting cameras on people. It is, what they are doing is they are observing, identifying, and recording the behavior of law-abiding citizens. Now, it's only on certain intersections, but it can only go up from there. So, in that respect, that's why I'm opposed to it. And people always do tyrannical things, and then in public safety, it's always done that. So, also, the yellow light should be uniform throughout the state, probably throughout the country. That's just common decency. I mean, if you think the light's going to turn red in 10 seconds and it turns red in 5 seconds, you're basically not doing good to the people. Now, also, the traffic and parking fines have gone up. From fiscal year 2011, it was $928,336, and fiscal year 2013, it was $3,663,000.
Thank you. Your time is up. All right, Candidate Rice?
Yeah, I think everyone here is in agreement that we would all vote against red light cameras. I've been on the record from the very beginning. I don't like those things. And I think that part of the problem is that they're clearly introduced to increase revenue, not public safety. It's important to know, though, that the city can't go out on its own and just adjust yellow light times and other types of things that deal with the light synchronization. You have to work with other agencies, namely the Florida Department of Transportation. If we go off on our own to change light times, we jeopardize tens of millions of dollars in grant money for our roads and safety. So let's just be sure that we understand the tools it takes to fix this. Secondly, if I do not prevail in killing the red light cameras, I'm going to suggest that the city not put that money in the general revenue, but let's put our money where our mouth is. Let's use that money and put it right back into public safety.
Thank you. Now, this next question will be directed first at Candidate Eldridge. The city places restrictions on privately owned property that has historical significance. Do you feel that the current restrictions adequately protect our shared history, or would you propose looser or tighter restrictions or regulations?
Well, the first priority is the property owner. So whatever the property owner says, that's their property. They decide how their property is going to be dealt with. I do like, for example, the Mayoral, I used to work there. It's a beautiful place that's got a lot of history. So yeah, I do support protecting it, but ultimately it's got to be about the property owner's rights. The city takes a back seat to who owns the property.
All right, thank you. Candidate Rice?
I think what's beneficial about historical preservation is that we have a way to approach to save some of these older buildings that really do contribute to our history and our unique culture here in St. Petersburg. I do have a resident in my district, though, who reminds me that we do need to be more flexible at times. He lives in Granada Terrace. There's a historic district, but his particular house was built in the 50s, not the 1920s. And he's an architect. He's doing a really good job, responsible job, trying to fix up his own house. I do think that when it's fair to, that we should work with residents who are trying to improve their homes in these districts and just approach it with a sense of reason, because people do, first and foremost, have their own private property rights, which I greatly respect.
Thank you. Candidate Michaela.
Well, yeah, preserving our history is important, but it has to balance out with the property rights of owners. It's not appropriate for a group of citizens to go to a business owner and say that we dug your building historic. Therefore, you shall not change it without major changes, without the approvals from the city, without committees. What happens when you do that? Well, by trying to work to protect history, what we've done is worsen stagnation. We've created a system where if someone wants to remodel a building so it can be a modern hotel, now they can't do that. Now people are going to stay in that place. And maybe it's more expensive to maintain. So let's keep that in mind. Let's balance it out. We have a neighborhood that's historic, like in Old Northeast, and they don't want electronic messaging centers and signs in the corner of it. That's reasonable. And I have a feeling the businesses that live there are going to go along with it. So let's do more of a partnership with our businesses in our neighborhood. Maybe our historic group should go straight to the business owner first and get on the same page with them as opposed to local government using force.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze.
I think with many other things, historic preservation is an education issue. I've come across recently a group of people, again in the Granada Terrace neighborhood, that I think perhaps misunderstood what it meant for their neighborhood to be historically preserved, if you will. Something very interesting to me, I would think that you had a traditional architecture of some type and then you were to make an addition to that home, that it would be natural in a historic district that that new addition would blend in with the current style and architect. But the way it turns out, you have to veer completely away from that, such that your original structure is very obvious as opposed to the new structure. And this is an example in the building that's right behind City Hall, the annex building. The front of it is an older building, but if you look at the back of it, it's very modern looking, very different. And that's kind of counterintuitive.
Thank you. Now this question is we're going to begin with candidate Michaela.
Let me just say it.
We are not permitted to have response to responses. You can deal with your constituency after this forum if you wish. All right, your question, sir. Would you be in favor of letting the Rays look or move anywhere else before their contract at Tropicana Field is close to the end?
Well, number one, the Rays owe us money if they try to leave. If they try to leave, they owe us hundreds of millions of dollars to just build that stadium. A lot of people want that stadium, no voter first. Now, I do agree that we should stop paying them over $1.5 million in subsidies every year. We should stop giving them 30,000 hours of police overtime to direct traffic. We could take 15,000 of those hours and put them on our street and start affecting crime, especially in Midtown and other areas that are crime. So I think the rates can look, but this is where you negotiate. This is where you get your bargaining chip. You say, well, if you want to go look, we want $1.5 million in subsidies to be gone. And by the way, sign right here that says under no circumstance will you leave us holding back for hundreds of million dollars in bond payments on that stadium we built for you.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze.
Just in the last few days, I kind of started looking at the Rays a little bit differently. And yesterday, when I was up here in this neighborhood, as a matter of fact, I talked to a gentleman who had kind of a unique idea. The problem with the Rays is attendance. They are one of the best teams in the league, yet they are almost the worst in attendance, with the worst being Miami, unfortunately, it's in Florida. If there were a way for us to improve attendance, the issue of the stadium would be gone. What this man suggested is we possibly try to promote more people from these top 10 tier of attendance that can't get tickets to come down here. Let's get with the airlines, let's get with the hotels, let's get with all these other people and try to get more attendance down here. Now, you could argue that, there might be issues with the Rays having too many of the opponent, the opposition team there. I'm not so sure they're feeling the love right now anyway, so it might not make much of a difference.
Thank you. Candidate Eldridge.
Yeah, I'm going to enforce the contract. They made a commitment they have to stay out and they've got good attendance. We don't have that here. It's not the same scale. So that's what's happening, is that we don't have the same type of community that other communities are, and that's why we're not getting the same results. But ultimately, it's not our problem that the Rays can't market their team effectively. My job as a member of City Council is to do what's in the best interest of City Council. Major League Baseball needs to do what's in the best interest of Major League Baseball. We'll try to come together and form some sort of agreement, but ultimately, my job is to do what's in the best interest of St. Petersburg, and that was in the best interest of Major League Baseball.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
I think we ought to do everything we can to keep the Rays here, and we do have a contract. I don't think one dime of taxpayer money needs to be spent to build a new stadium. We are lacking in relationships with corporate businesses to help work to get better turnout to the Rays games, and I think that's something that we can work on to improve. But you could wave a magic wand and just plop down a new baseball stadium anywhere in the Tampa Bay area, and attendance to games is still going to be an issue, because guess what? Because we don't have mass transit to connect people to these areas. So we still back into a mass transit question, even with talking about baseball. And I'm clearly the only candidate here in this race who's seriously committed and knowledgeable about this issue. I'm not still just making up my mind about it, and I'm committed to it. I am intrigued by the pay to stray proposal by Councilmember Gertis, what it's nicknamed, because I think it could be a strategy to see if the Rays are even interested in staying in the region.
Thank you very much. This will be the last question before we have our closing comments. And of course, we will begin with candidate Freeze. We're back to the lens. Comment on the process, and if the answer is no lens, where did it go from here?
Something went terribly wrong between the final plan done by the peer task force and the request for qualifications that went out. People inserted in there this idea that they didn't want to restrict the design creativity, that we wanted something highly iconic, and that's not what the people of St. Petersburg want. The great news is everybody's going to be able to vote about it on August 27th. I think the natural progression after that is decide what we're going to do with the inverted pyramid. I would be in favor of another vote. At this point, I think we've gone too far. There are too many bad feelings about this. We need to get back to the public and make sure they know what they want. If we decide to go ahead and refurbish the existing pyramid, the issue there is cost. We can't spend more than the $50 million, and at this point, it's probably down to 37. So,
Thank you. Candidate Eldridge.
Yeah, I think the lens is a beautiful sidewalk, but I'm really not in favor of spending public money on it. I want a private company to have the pier, or at least be in charge of the pier. Ownership, we can negotiate that. But if there's profit to be made out there, there'll be no shortage of people who want to take over the pier. If it's just going to be another $1 million a year debt that we have, our obligation that we have to pay, then you're not going to be able to give it away. So it's ultimately the best bet is to let private business take it over.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
I think the city failed in something that's just so critical and so important, and that is getting public engagement right, meaningful public engagement, and really understanding and having the skill set to do what it takes to have a better process, to bring the community in, for making such an important decision about something that we all feel so emotionally about our peer. There's a saying that you build your credibility in spoonfuls and you lose it in a bucketful. And I think the city, unfortunately, lost their credibility in how they handled the public engagement, and we lost the public's trust. And whatever this next 828 process is going to be, one of the things that we have absolutely got to get right is we have to approach public engagement in a meaningful, vigorous, and robust way. And I feel confident that if we undertake that process, we won't have to wait long before we see a new pier in our city that we all feel comfortable with.
Thank you. Candidate Caleb.
The lens is a perfect example of why I'm running for city council. It's an example of a political lens. The elite politicians, bureaucrats, corporate cronies, the professional just all getting together deciding they want one. And I think it also tells you a lot about being I didn't wait for a poll. A year and a half ago, I was in front of City Council saying, this is the wrong direction. I did not see one of my opponents there. They waited for the polls. They waited to see what would be good politically. I went out and led. That's the kind of candidate you could trust. The question was, what would you do? I didn't hear any answer. I heard, well, let's do the process. Well, where we have a process for rail, the same process for land. Here's what you do. You let the private sector do it. Let them design and build a pier that we all love, that meets city standards, let them pay the taxes to us and take the tax subsidies away. And it will be based on our standards, it will be publicly accessible. And we take that $50 million and we give it back to the taxpayers in the form of tax cuts, we fund public safety, we do that every year.
Thank you. Now we will give each candidate a minute and a half for their closing statement, and we will start with candidate Eldridge.
Public service, that's what I've been doing pretty much a lot of my life. I don't want to say that my public service is better than the others, but it is. I do respect their service. They have served well, don't get me wrong, but the Marine Corps, it's 24/7 sometimes. You're out there, you're putting your life on the line, even in peacetime, which is when I served, mostly in peacetime. And the Marine Corps service, I saw my daughter walk for the first time on a videotape while I was in Okinawa for 6 months. So it's not like other public service where you go to a meeting and you have coffee and donuts and you go home. It's a serious commitment. My blood donation, 5 gallons now. In this community, I've done 3 gallons outside of the community, but that's an easy thing to do. You just lay there and you bleed. And more people should do that. It saves lives. You feel a little bit of prick, and that's it. You just lay there and bleed, and you're done. But that is my history of community service. Among other things, I've done all children's hospital telephone. It's not on my code. But if we're going to talk about community service, I just wanted to get that out there. I'm also very educated. I've got a Bachelor of Science in Biology. I've got 15 seconds left to end it there.
Thank you. Candidate Rice.
I would like to thank everyone tonight for being here and listening to us and participating in the process. Thank you, Petersburg Neighborhood Association. Thank you, Lee. And thank you, Richard, for your service. What sets me apart is my leadership. I'm a consensus builder. I consider myself a moderate. I have a skill to be able to work with all sides. I have the longest record of community service that I'm proud of, and I'm very proud to be supported by our fighters and police. And if those endorsements weren't important, I don't know why I saw them. I'm also proud to tell you I have the support of the Tampa Bay Times and other elected officials who I deeply respect, who have also served their community a long time. We need public servants who understand how important it is to be civil and to work well with others and to bring in experience. Public servants who are reasonable, who listen, who get things done. We don't need people who are rude, rigid, and reckless, or maybe with no track record of commitment at all, who are formulating their positions after they run for office. I'm the one here who has the longest track record. Count on me. My values are public service, engagement, equity, and accountability. Whatever you've looked at that I've done in my work and my volunteer work for the last 20 years, those are the values that permeate everything I do, and that you can count on me to be your best city council representative that I can be.
Thank you. Candidate Taylor.
Well, thank you very much. I'm a Marine spine surgeon. This is my hometown. I'm a family man. I've been married for 22 years, and I have 3 wonderful children. I'm a businessman, and I need a payroll every 2 weeks. I'm a community leader, and I've been working for the citizens for a long time. And this is a great city, but we're not living up to our potential. We have an economy that's stagnant, and a large reason for that is our government that overreaches. It's a political class. I think it's your job to pay the bills, keep your mouth shut, fund their grand visions that usually fail and usually only benefit them. Well, I aim to return the control of the city to your hands. And it's not going to happen if we have leaders who really don't listen to their constituents. I've seen our official here, candidate Rice, at the PSTA, while citizens got up there, 50% of the room saying, please do not put the referendum on to raise our sales taxes 14%. The kind of listening that we get from people like that is the one, well, you get to listen to me, and if you disagree with me, I'm just going to ignore you. That's what members of the political class do. Now, what do we need to do? We need to return your tax money to your pockets. We need to deregulate this economy in a responsible way so businesses can really flourish. We need to work one-on-one so neighbors help each other. I have a Good Neighbor Reward program that will give people tax breaks on utility bills, free golf rounds and the like when they go out and they help their brothers and sisters. And then we're going to really change some of the big social problems in our town. Help get me elected and I'll make sure this is your city again.
Thank you. Candidate Freeze?
Thank you all for coming, and I just realized, I think I looked at that side of the room the entire night. I am so sorry, all you guys. I'm Carolyn Freeze, candidate for City Council District 4, where I've spent the last 23 years living on the same street, raising my family and serving my neighborhood. I'm originally from Northwest Indiana, where I learned the value of hard work on my parents' horse farm, doing the dirty jobs, like cleaning stalls and baling hay. My mom's right there, she can attest to it. I've been living my platform elements of economic development, education, neighborhoods, and fiscal responsibility by starting technology companies that create jobs and export products, by volunteering in the public schools my children attend, by serving as president of my neighborhood association, and successfully managing the money at my home, my businesses, and in my volunteer activities. My plan for St. Petersburg is simple. You might even remember it from your childhood. Stop, look, listen, and lead. Stop the focus on politics, look for ways to improve, listen to what people have to say, and lead the city forward. I'm Carolyn Freeze, a consensus builder by nature and a problem solver by training as an engineer, and I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all of you